It is. Okay, perfect. All right. No, I didn't know you had
Okay, I think we'll get started. Good evening and welcome to the September 1st, 2022 meeting of the Planning Commission. For those of you viewing the meeting remotely, you will find the meeting agenda on the Planning Department website at accc.gov.com/planning. For those of you attending in person, on the table by the door, you will find a sign-in sheet and copies of tonight's agenda. For each agenda item, we will begin with a report from ACC planning staff. This is followed by a presentation by the applicant not to exceed 10 minutes. We will then hear from members of the public. 3 minutes are allowed for anyone who wishes to address the commission. If a member of the public is here representing a specific interest group, such as a homeowners association, please let us know. When addressing the commission, please provide your name, address, and the nature of your interest in the project. Please direct your comments to the planning commissioners and not to the applicants. The audience is instructed to please refrain from applauding or jeering the speakers. After public comment, the applicant or the representative may request a 2-minute response. After that, the applicant will take their seat in the audience. For all speakers, please pay attention to the timing device near the projector screen. The device will display an amber light 30 seconds before the expiration of the allotted time to warn the speaker to wrap it up. Once the red light is showing, the speaker must take their seat. At this point, the public portion of this agenda item is closed and the Planning Commission will proceed to discuss the item. We'll receive no additional public comments unless requested by the commission. The applicant will only speak if a planning commissioner directs a question to them. Exhibits may be displayed by the applicants or members of the public at the podium. Written correspondence received by noon yesterday has been forwarded to the commission and is part of the public record. Any additional written materials to be placed into the record must be read during public comment within the time limits previously stated. Finally, please note that the microphones in this room are sensitive and that the meeting is being broadcast live. Please turn off or silence your cell phones. Okay, so we'll start with the introduction of staff reports.
So approval.
Great, we have one motion. Would anyone like to second? Okay, Matt, all in favor of introducing staff reports and all other documents submitted to the Planning Commission at this meeting into the official record? Please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Great. And minutes from approval of August 4th Planning Commission meeting.
Move approval.
I have one edit that I mentioned to Brad already.
Yes, and we will make that correction. It was the second motion that was not deleted out of it. We'll take care of that. I believe it was on Mill Center.
Okay, sure.
Not sure which one, but we've got it marked and we'll make the correction.
Did you want to second that? Or-
Sure.
Okay,
With correction.
corrections. Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay, great. Is there anything about May courts, Brad?
We have no report this evening, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. So we'll get started. Our first item on the agenda is 165 Mill Center Boulevard and 160 and 180 Millwood Drive.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Stephen Jaques, planner with the Athens-Clarke County Planning Department. Tonight we have the 165 Mill Center Boulevard project. Keep going. It's located here at 165 Mill Center Boulevard. It also covers the parcels fronting 160 and 180 Millwood Drive. This is what the site currently looks like. That's the aerial view. As you can see, it is mostly wooded. There are a few residential properties over there, mobile homes for the most part. The applicant has requested to rezone the property from RS8 and commercial general to RM2 with a planned development. That means it's a binding plan. And this requires a change to the future land use map as well from general business and traditional neighborhood to mixed density residential. The proposal is for 90 townhomes, 270 bedrooms, so 3-bedroom units. Each unit is approximately 2,000 square feet. Half of the units have rear-loaded parking that would be accessed via an alley, and the other half have they face that alley. There's 3.5 acres of green space and a couple of stormwater ponds. Those are the most notable features of the proposal. This is the current future land use on the left. You can see it is split between the general business and the traditional neighborhood on the right. And then under the proposal, you would have all 3 of these parcels as mixed density residential. This is what the current zoning is on the left, CG and RS8. And then under the proposal, it would all move to RM2 PD. This is a rendering of the site plan. As you can see, everything's ranged very similar to how it has been in previous, with one street that would be a private street at the request of the Transportation and Public Works Department. So the private street comes down the center with access points on Melwood and Mill Center. And then you can see those 2 streets on either side are the alleys. These are the architectural renderings. These units in a previous application were detached. Now they are attached in various configurations. That's essentially what they would look like. 4 different designs, subtle variations. Our staff recommendation is, we don't usually split it, but it is split based on this one. There's a couple of major points here. First of all, we support the change of the future land use to a mixed density residential along Jennings Mill Parkway. That area was originally conceived as a commercial and industrial area, pending a construction of a flyover by the Georgia Department of Transportation over Loop 10. GDOT chose not to construct that flyover, and so in the intervening 20 years or so, the development pattern of that area has switched over to more of a commercial and residential mix. We don't think that we'll see a lot of industrial there in the future, and so we generally, as a staff, support moving more in the residential direction. That would be a question for Planning Commission to consider. If you think that the area should remain as a commercial and industrial area, then it would make sense to deny this project. If you think that it is moving more towards the commercial residential mix, then it would make sense to consider approving the future land use. As far as the actual zoning proposal, staff finds that there are some issues there. The applicant has claimed to have used new urbanist principles as a staff based on some of the new urbanist projects that we've looked at. We don't really see a lot of new urbanist principles reflected in that design, such as offering multiple housing types. This is just 90 townhomes. There's no walkable non-residential uses. Half of the units face basically an automobile-centric alley. The architecture is not really, it's pretty nondescript. New urbanism tends to use more of a traditional style of architecture, and the various green spaces proposed in the project are not integrated within the site. They're sort of isolated pods. New urbanists would typically organize houses around central greens, and we're looking for some of that character in these RM zones, and we just don't see it at this time. So our recommendation as a staff is to approve the future land use and to deny the zoning request. This is just like the last time. That concludes the staff report at this time.
Great, thank you. Okay, next we'll hear from the applicant. And of course, you can do this however you want, but I know that for us as a planning commission, since we've seen this so many times, if you wouldn't mind highlighting sort of the changes from last time we saw it, that would be helpful to us.
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, Jerry Wood, with Due South. So the main reason we changed it to all townhomes is to get more green space and more of a central, less impervious, and to get some walkable green space throughout the development. And I've actually had some 3D renderings done of the project. I do feel like, and I know there's several commercial tracks on Jenny's Mill Parkway that have been sitting there vacant and even for sale for quite some time. So it doesn't really feel like that there's a high demand for commercial on that corridor. We feel like there is a high demand for some good residential workforce type housing, which is what this is. It's 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, family style, workforce type housing. So that's our goal, is to get some good, usable, affordable workforce housing. And the zoning allows us to do that because it allows us to develop horizontally and vertically at the same time, which does, help a lot with cost of construction and just time that it takes to get from beginning to a finished product, which even with this zoning, probably looking at 2024 to get to a finished product. Sometime in 2024. So if you want to pull up the renderings, I think this will help you a lot to see kind of what it can look like as a finished product. Actually, this is actually a fly through of what it looks like. So this is down the main street where there's no driveways. It's just a main corridor with walkways to the kind of the central green space. Realize differences in the townhomes, but at the same time, it's a really good, really nice, well-built, professional look. And there's some integrated green spaces that connect to a walking trail along the full perimeter of the open space of the conserved canopy. We are only at 41% impervious on this site with an allowable 65%. So we've been able to keep our impervious down by over 20% of what we're allowed. And our conserved canopy and our tree canopy coverage is even over and above what's allowed. So this would be from rear entry along the alleyways to a single car garage and a door for package drop off for accessibility. Kind of just gives you a good idea of the potential of the development can look like. And if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, next.
If you want us to show the stills,
You can show the stills if you want. That's fine. The fly through kind of gives you a real good idea of what it potentially can look like, but. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the public. If anyone wants to speak to this particular agenda item, is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition to this item? Okay, great. Then we'll have our planning commission discussion. Anyone like to start us off?
Well, I'm rather conversant with new urbanism. I've been dealing with it, and I've actually given papers on it for about 25 years. And I asked earlier when I saw in this report that this was purported to be no urbanism, and it's not. It doesn't resemble anything to do with urbanism. And I think this could actually benefit, this project could benefit by doing some of that, having a mix of housing types, having some commercial uses. They don't have to be big, they can be office space and that sort of thing. And making it walkable. This is not a walkable design. Can you put up the site plan that shows the actual housing and the streets, that's it. I see nothing walkable about this at all. If anything, that straightaway street, Main Street, that begs to be a speed trap. I mean, it just begs for people to just tear down there. I see it all the time. Whenever you see a straightaway like that, there's nothing visually to stop a car, stop a driver from slowing down, and for bikes and things like, and pedestrians. It's a straightaway. Think of Lumpkin Street. Lumpkin Street is just straight. I can't support this design. It simply is, it's not what it's purported to be in the report. And I think it could be much better done as a new urbanist. Type design includes things like short streets, green spaces, housing of different types that are surrounding green space so that it's seen as a walkable area, a place where kids can go and play safely. And it's not something that is just a generic type housing development that you can see anywhere in the Atlanta area. So I will not be able to support the rezone.
I have a couple questions for the applicant. First question is about the streets. Are they, do they have to be that wide?
That's the minimum street standard.
That's the minimum.
They have to, it's 24 foot back of curb to back curb. That's a 10-foot travel lane and 2-foot curb and gutter on each side.
Yeah, so our laws made you make those streets that wide.
Right.
It kills me.
That's the minimum width for a local residential street.
Okay. So a factoid that I saw that surprised me, are these houses all really 2,000 square feet each?
Right, yeah, close to it.
Why?
Well, that's including the garage.
Oh, okay.
So they're 22 wide by 45 long,
Oh, okay.
2-story.
Okay, I see. And that includes the garage. So the heated square footage is in
Heated square footage would
thousands.
be around probably 1,600, I think.
Okay. That sounds a little less
Right.
crazy big. Okay, that was all I had in terms of questions.
Sure.
For right now. I'm sure I'll have more. No, actually, I'm sorry. I got one more.
Sure.
Why do you keep coming back with this? What
Well, I mean,
cost thing for you?
the goal is to build, an affordable workforce type housing. New urbanism is great, but a lot of design criteria, a lot of buildability and all of that gets really expensive, especially on a large tract of land. Our goal has been from the beginning to bring something that's affordable, that's usable, and that looks good. I realize that it's not, a full new urbanism plan, but we are, this is outside of the main part of the city. It's on a larger tract of land. It's close to restaurant, retail. You can walk all through this project. It's got sidewalks on both sides. It's got green space and parks going up the middle, connected by sidewalks. It's got playground on the backside. It's got walking trail around the conserved tree canopy. We're only developing 4.1 acres out of 11 and a half. So, as far as impervious area goes.
Oh, yeah.
So we're trying our best to get to, I myself have 20 employees, and a lot of them don't live in the Athens area because they can't find a good, affordable place to live. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. And in order to do that, you have to have certain things that are, you can make it look good, you can connect it, you can make it, walkable, but at the same time, you've got to be able to build it and build it reasonably. So that's the predicament.
Yeah, thanks. And I realized after you started talking that I might have come across confrontationally or aggressively. I was just.
Oh, no, not at all.
About your why here. And that is the last question that I have for you right now. So thank you.
No problem.
And just to speak on this, one thing I did notice that hasn't been brought up, looking on old plans, looking at this new plan, we have bigger trees.
Right.
We went from all medium trees to a mix of medium and large trees, and I think that was, you can see that on the aerial space there. I love that you have taken, that you went, and I saw that the making these attached units rather than detached was actually directly responsive to some notes in the staff report from last time, in terms of kind of fitting this project into the idea of the zoning. So I saw that and I appreciated that. Getting rid of those side yards, consolidating them into more common space. I think that's a great idea. Google says that this is a 10-minute walk from Academia Brewing, just in saying it's, not walkable to any uses. It is a 10-minute walk to Academia Brewing specifically, because that was like the thing that I went into Google to type up. Closer to the Goodwill, which I would probably personally walk to more. And most big picture, like, it is walkable to the Georgia Square Mall, which
Absolutely.
we know is being eyed for something new. This is walkable to both present and future separate uses.
Right.
As well as being walkable to public transit along the highway. Just to speak a little to why I am so why I am so for this project. It's not my favorite thing that I've ever seen. The renderings actually hurt my heart a little bit, mostly because of the wideness of the streets. And it didn't feel great to me. But I will say that I am constantly thinking on two crises, basically. We have our housing crisis and we have our climate crisis. And so if someone is coming with new housing now, and that housing is not actively only car-centric, I think that we are doing the community a great disservice by turning it down, and by tearing it down, and by delaying it, and by trying to make it look a specific, perfect way. I've spent months, and specifically over the last week, I am constantly bombarded with people who can't live in Athens. They cannot find a house in Athens, and either if they have the means, they'll move out of Athens, and if they don't, they'll move in with family,
Right.
either in Athens or out of it. And if they don't have family, they become homeless. And I've met many people over the past, since our last meeting, who are currently immediately facing homelessness because of our housing shortage. And so that's my piece I'm going to say on this, and I'll try not to take up too much of everyone's time. I supported this last time. I support it even more now. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but we need it desperately.
Thank you.
Jerry, they'll call you back up if you got a question.
Picking up on the road question, I guess this may be for Brad. Is there a distinction made between like a regular road and an alleyway in
Yes.
terms of sizes?
Yes.
So is there a minimum size for an alleyway?
I mean, typically alleys, because in order for them to function appropriately with driveways and the ability to back out, or they normally come in at around 16 feet in width. You could do that with a improved shoulder on either side and the center pavement being a little bit more narrow. But that is different than the 20 feet that Mr. Woods was referring to for a public street type design for two-way traffic, and that is 10-foot travel lanes in both directions.
Which would be the distinction between the one road that goes straight through versus the ones on the side that are,
Yes.
yeah.
And a lot of those width issues in today, I mean, it's based on two-way travel. It's based on fire and emergency access, ingress and egress. Those types of things are partially what drives it. The 24 feet includes to the back of the curb on both sides. So it's going to be similar to a neighborhood street.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that was my one real like when I look at it just seems like there's no difference between an alley versus the main street through here. So I just feel like it's just gonna be all streets throughout it. One question for the developer.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'll actually just say to that, the alleyways are 16 foot. The only thing that's 24 foot is the main drive.
so I thought it said 20 foot. I guess I saw 40 foot easement.
Yeah, it's 40 foot easement, but the alleyway should be 16 foot paved.
16. Okay. All right. Sorry.
And the rendering really didn't catch that real well, just from
Right.
my perspective. It was just more of a, this is what it could potentially look like.
I see. Okay. Yeah. They all look kind of like they're the same size.
Yeah, but they're not. The alleyways will be standard alleyway sizes and the main road will be standard.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah.
Sure. And you had another question, sorry.
Well, and I did have a question too. So you also mentioned like bringing affordable housing. Was the plan for this to be rentals or owned by the people who live there?
Well, it could be either. You can sell these as individual condos. And I was actually just looking and reading about an article where Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are actually getting more involved in financing condos, condo type housing, which is basically you buy the bricks and sticks of the house and then everything else remains a common area. So everything's maintained the same, all the landscaping, all the yards, everything's maintained the same, but you can buy your individual unit. It's really hard to say, which exactly these will be because like I said, it'll be 2024 before they're complete. So we don't know what the interest rate market, what the finance market, anything of that's going to be.
There'll be an HOA.
Yeah, there will be an HOA. Either way, there'll be an HOA.
And whether or not, okay.
And either way, it'll all be maintained the same, which in my opinion is really important because
Thank you.
that keeps all values the same, which is really important when you're selling condos.
Thanks. Okay. I have a question.
So my question was gonna be around affordability, but it sounds like that's not clear yet.
It's just a stab in the dark at this point, just because we don't know really, even material pricing is changing and material availability is changing on a week-to-week basis still.
Okay, the other question is around accessibility. I see, it looks like two entrances or how is this set up?
Okay, so the main entrance is off Mill Center Boulevard, which is a really wide street, really nice road in and out. And then it's just an in and out off of Melwood because it's a lot smaller street. It's not very wide and not very really accessible. We want, the majority of the traffic coming in off of Mill Center.
And it looks like from the layout of each of the parcels that there's a one-car garage. So is the idea that the second car would be on the sidewalk or like on?
Well, there's actually, the driveways are 12 by 22, I believe. So there's room for a second car on the other side of the sidewalk.
Okay. That's all the questions I had.
Thanks. Apparently we like to have you sit down, stand up. Staff question, Brad. This Does this not require a separate tree management plan because that's incorporated into the main rezoning site plan? Or will it need to have a separate tree management?
I mean, ultimately, when it goes through the permitting process, if they did not submit something from a standpoint of requesting waivers or else, then it's expected to meet it.
Okay,
And that helps a lot what they provided us with the fly through, because that becomes part of the record. So if this is approved, when it goes to construction, the fly through showed the trees. So, you know, if we need to, and we've got a tree management plan that doesn't match what that fly through, because those were in the green areas that they're showing as little pocket parks, and they're just showing it as a mass of tree planting. So it will assist us in confirming tree management if this is approved in this configuration. We'll count the trees on the video.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the land use part of this is really easy. I think that's, for me, an easy yes, that more residential on Jennings-Mill Parkway makes a lot of sense. On the rezoning, you know, the argument for it to me is that Athens desperately needs housing. We need workforce housing, and lots of it yesterday. So that inclines me favorably toward the project. Comparing it to how it came in last time, I really do appreciate the attached townhomes rather than a bunch of useless 12-foot yards between detached cottages that was shown last time. You know, there were like 90 little side yards, none of which were big enough to do much with. And so these separate green spaces, I think, are much more useful and make it much more livable. Completely agree with Lucy that this is not really new urbanism, you know, and I guess if I were designing it, there are things I would change, but I don't think as a planning commissioner that it's my job to design it or to insist that it be perfect by my standards. You know, I think it's, in terms of our role, I think townhomes in this location, absolutely. I think this is, it's good for Athens. It provides much needed supply and so I'm inclined to support the rezoning as well.
Taylor?
Yeah, I like the plan, but I'm concerned about the affordability. And earlier you said you had 20 employees, 20 plus employees who live out of town that should be living here. And right now we do have a housing crisis in Athens, and a lot of people are about to be displaced. So my concern is more so for the people who are already here. Where can they be? Are they gonna be able to go somewhere like this? And if this is approved, are the employees gonna have first dibs on the housing rather than the residents who actually live in Athens who need this type of housing? So that's where I'm kind of stuck at right now. But I do like the plan, but the only thing in question for me is the affordability and who it's for.
Can I answer?
He didn't ask a question.
And would anyone else wish to speak to this or make a motion?
I want to just say one thing after Taylor there, because I think that it's a very salient point. And a struggle that I see is that we, as a county government, seriously lack any power to, as of now, any power or many powers to make housing more affordable, generally speaking. You know, we can't do rent control. We can't have a fair housing law that covers Section 8. We can't do anything to really interfere with the profitability of housing as a commodity, because that's all been explicitly or implicitly taken over by the state at one point or another in our history. State has said, you know, county governments, if you want to make things better, forget about it. You can't do that because we said so. And so when we look at a development, a development of new housing, I think it's very worthwhile to ask who is it for? But if we are gonna wait until the county has the power to make new housing be for everybody, then we will just not build new housing. And that is it's a separate crisis on itself. It feeds into the affordability, I think, but also just having enough houses is its own problem, even as we hopefully people work together to change the state laws as well. So.
Kristen?
Yeah, so since like in the different iterations of this project, I feel like I've always been very like meh about it. Like just like, I'm not really for it. I'm not really against it. And I haven't really been able to pin down why. So I feel kind of bad about that. Other than, and what it kind of dawned on me just as we're talking here is like this idea, like I get how it can be made affordable if that's what ends up happening. I get the issues of construction today and all of the, the cost of building it. And I understand all of this. I guess what gets me though is like, why does something that has to be affordable have to be very like meh? Like, why can't someone live in something that's designed well and is also affordable? It's like, we either get one or the other. We either get like a block of apartments and look, here's your affordable housing, or we get like curvy streets and landscaping and look, it's new urban design, and that's expensive. And so I guess that's my one. I mean, in the end, I'm probably going to support it and it's fine, but that's just the one thing that just sticks in my craw about this is like, it would just be nice if it was just a little bit extra. Like, we have green space, but it'd be nice if like the green space was just a little bit more thought out. Like, it just, that's just my soapbox. Thank you.
Lucy?
Well, to bring this all back to the way it started, one, it's not new urbanism. I don't like it when people tell me it's new urbanism because I know better. And I think a lot of the people on this commission. But the other thing is that the mayor and commission and the planning commission have been told that pieces of the developments, we're going to make this affordable. There's nothing that makes it affordable that we can agree to. They just have to say, this is affordable, and it immediately passes. And I worry about that because what we're going to end up doing is, I'm a big person in design. I think design is paramount. And because it makes a difference as to how people feel about the places they live. They either like it or they just meh, or worse. But developers and property owners can say to us, I'm going to make this work for us. I'm going to make this affordable. And are we going to accept a meh or worse design because somebody says, I'm going to make it affordable? And I have a hard time. I'm like Matt. I have no problem with the future land use change. I just don't like this at all.
We have 2 votes on this item tonight. Would anyone like to make a motion on the future land use?
I'll let you do that.
Matt?
I'll move to approve the future land use.
Okay, I'll say. Okay, so motion and second by Lucy. Do we need to take a roll call vote for that, or, okay, all in favor of the motion to approve the future land use change? Please say aye, raise your hand. Aye. Okay, and anyone opposed? 1, okay. Great. Okay, so that, the future land use map change is approved. Would anyone like to make a motion on the zoning request? That's, or no?
Okay, we're gonna make the opposite.
It's probably true.
Okay, I'll move to approve the.
Okay, I'll second it. Second by Sarah. Also roll call vote for this one.
Roll call on this one, please. Yes.
Who seconded?
Sarah?
And so we need to do a roll call. vote.
Yeah. Just call it off at,
Okay, Garing,
Yes.
Hall. Yes. Morales,
Yes.
Pass.
Yes.
Fallon,
No,
oh, I skipped, and then Sanders.
No.
Okay, so the motion passes to recommend approval of the future land use for the.
yes, okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is 720 Spring Valley Road. We'll start with the staff report.
Yeah, this application is for 710 and 720 Spring Valley Road. This is where it is located. See to the top left, there's a mobile home park there. That line through the center is the right-of-way for the Firefly Trail. You have Spring, so it sits in between that right-of-way for the Firefly Trail, formerly a rail line, and Spring Valley Road. It consists of two parcels. If you know where the area is, you know that the mine and some of those mineral processing companies are to the corner left of this property. What the property looks like now from the aerial, as you can see, mostly wooded, but with some existing structures and some stored, the Airstream trailers that are potentially proposed to be part of this are also stored on the site there. As you can see to the corner in the left is where some of the contractors that work with the stuff coming out of the mine are located. And then mobile homes to the top left there. So the request is a special use permit for commercial outdoor recreation in an employment industrial zone. The proposal itself is for a campground with an 18-hole mini golf course. There'd be approximately 34 lodging structures of various types, including restored vintage trailers, Airstreams, yurts, tents, geodesic domes. There would be several support buildings, including restrooms, laundry, a reception area. It would tie into the Firefly Trail as that trail is being constructed, so the property would have direct access there. They're also proposing 76 parking spaces, and they have asked for 2 variances, one to code section 939E1 and the other to code section 932D3. And the first one is to use gravel surfaces instead of paved surfaces for part of the parking area, and the other is to reduce the amount of parking required for the golf course. They're not proposing any changes to the future land use, so it is currently employment and it would remain employment. Same thing with the zoning. It is currently zoned employment industrial and it would remain so. This is the site plan. You can see the trailers are arranged on the left with some of the support buildings, and then the driveway kind of loops around a little bit there. You can see various locations for the domes and the tents and all that kind of stuff. The Firefly Trail is on the bottom. And then there's just various open spaces scattered throughout the property. And parking would kind of weave in and out there. This is an aerial of the site. The applicant included, it includes some of those Airstream trailers would be restored and then provided as basically camp rentals. Our staff report includes several points. We note that the application is consistent with the future land use map, the zoning map, and we think it is consistent with the 2018 comp plan. We do support the variance to allow a gravel surface because that would reduce impacts to the environment and the site. We note that Transportation and Public Works and the Fire Marshal have some specific requirements there for what can be paved and what can't. And so if this were approved, it would need to comply with those standards. We also support the variance to reduce the parking requirement by 50%, in large part because it has access from the Firefly Trail. But at this time, we are recommending a table because the plan cannot be approved as binding until they've resolved some of their code issues and provided some architectural elevations. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you. Okay, we'll hear from our applicant.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Josh Coons with Coons Environmental Design. We've actually been working on this property for quite some time. Ms. Rowland, you may remember, we rezoned it back in 2009. It was residential back then, and the rezone to employment industrial seemed like a logical transition from the residential zone that is adjacent to it and nearby to the heavy industrial zone that's directly across Hancock. The Firefly Trail back then was just kind of an idea, and one that we were hoping would come along, but we weren't quite sure. And the property ultimately just became sort of subsequently became used as the vintage trailer storage. So what's been great, obviously, since then, is that the Firefly Trail has become real and it's made it all the way down to the intersection of Spring Valley and Hancock. And as that was coming online and the trail was being constructed and evolving, we were constantly asking ourselves, like, what doesn't Athens have that would work in a location like this? And given the vintage trailers on site, a campground sort of popped in as something that could be a great tourism draw. Vintage trailers in general have become popular. COVID helped us in sort of getting everybody back outside and sort of rekindled a love affair with the outdoors and camping in particular, glamping specifically. And a lot of sort of tourism-based glamping businesses have popped up around Georgia, North Georgia. There's a great vintage trailer resort outside Asheville called Junebug. It's pretty fantastic and give you an idea of what someplace like this could be. So it's a fantastic location, being on the Firefly Trail, 2 miles from downtown, almost equidistant to Winterville, that we can bring people into Athens and they can explore ultimately by bike with the resource that the trail has provided. The idea is that we have a variety of lodging experiences. The trailers are one thing, the domes, the yurts, the safari tents, it's all part of the fun campiness of the campground. We've got ideas that each one of those sort of landscapes will be designed to support it. The domes are in Space Camp. The yurt villages, in my mind, looks a lot like the Ewok village in Star Wars. And I think the Savannah safari tents kind of speak for themselves. But it's actually a relatively low impact development compared to what could be there in the EI zone. And so we feel like it's a great use of the property, given the residential that's around it, and kind of an interesting use given the industrial that's on the other side. So the other component of this, which is really kind of fun too to think about, is the mini putt-putt course. And again, it's kind of hard to believe that Athens doesn't have one. I think we did years and years ago from what I was told. But since our current zoning, we haven't had one in town. And I know for me, that's a fun thing that I do with my kids today. It's a fun thing that I did with my parents and grandparents growing up. I think it'd be fun for people on the Firefly Trail, as they're going through that heavy industrial sector and all of a sudden see this really fun mini putt-putt. They're welcome to come in. This will be something that'll be open to the public as well as obviously just an amenity to the campground. But it's, and it'd be biker friendly. True. Sorry, that was a little fun play on words given concerns about motorcycles other places. But all in all, we think this is a fun idea, something that would sort of complement the area and would actually be a nice resource for Athens. We do have 2 variances, and I think they probably speak for themselves. The gravel is kind of fitting in a campground environment. It's a resource that's close by, and it will work in these conditions, help us sort of work towards some of the low impact strategies of the campground. The parking requirement for the mini golf is the other variance. We were kind of blown away when we saw it was 4 cars per hole, which assumes everybody that gets a putter is going to drive up in a car. So we asked for that variance, just, assuming that a lot of these folks will either already be at the campground or hopefully will be coming there by bike. But 4 cars per hole seems a little bit more than what we need. So ultimately, this is a special use request to consider the outdoor recreation use on this parcel. That use takes many forms. What we are specifically requesting within the outdoor recreation is the campground and the mini golf. Planning has recommended tabling, and we completely agree with that. We were hoping that the architectural component of this would be available prior to tonight, but it's not. So I think tabling will give us the time that we need to bring that to you so you can look at this as a whole. Also understand that we have some concerns from local residents. So the tabling, I think, will allow us to make sure that if there's anything we can do relative to those concerns, we can certainly take care of that coming back. So if you don't mind, it would be great, despite the table, to get some input on how you might feel about this. If you have comments or suggestions, we can certainly take those back to the drawing board as we look at this relative to any other comments we might receive. So thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move to the public comment portion for this agenda item. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of this item? And is there anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition to this item?
Against?
Yes.
No, bear with me, please. I've had the list of surgery. I sit down for a long time. So more difficult to get up. May I remove my mask when I get to the podium?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Willa Fambro, and I live at 1053 Spring Valley Road. And I come here tonight to ask you all not to approve of the special use because it is absolutely too close to my neighborhood, which is a predominantly Black neighborhood. And the people who are right next door to it, it seems, I'm looking at the property line, but don't have any idea of the distance, but it looks like it's less than 100 feet or 200 feet from their home. I heard him talk about all the good things that they feel like it will do, but it does nothing for us. And I feel over the long run, well, let me back up a little bit. I moved there in 2014 after taking care of my parents. And I knew I was gonna get old someday. So this was supposed to be my old age home. And so I got an architect, got a contractor, and I built this home. My family kind of has a little bit of longevity. My mother passed away at 88, my dad at 97 and a half. And the things that aren't mentioned to me are the traffic, the noise, because it's so close to our neighborhood. My home is only 4 houses away from this property. And I feel like we're being pushed out. I feel like that if it been a different type of neighborhood, it wouldn't even have been thought about. But because it is who we are and where we are, and a lot of times we don't come up and speak for ourselves, but today I'm speaking up. These are some of my neighbors who live even closer than I do. Today we've come here to speak up and say that we wish you all would not approve this special use. I hear words used like fun for everybody. So that doesn't include us, huh? It's not gonna be fun for us because we're gonna have to contend with the traffic and the noise and anything else that comes with that amount of people. Because you got 35 trailer spaces, you got mini golf. Right now, we live in a quiet, pleasant neighborhood. The traffic is not bad there, and I love, love, love it. And at 73 years old, I really don't want to sell my house and try to find another home for my old age. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who wishes to speak in opposition to this application?
Good evening. My name is Sheila Alexander and I reside at 959 Spring Valley Road. Listen to the description of the plan, ideas. I do not support it because it doesn't serve the current residents in the area. I see it bringing extra, traffic for us. The bike trail does serve us, but I do not see anywhere where this, recreational facility would serve the residents of Spring Valley Road. So I do ask that you do not approve this plan idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else?
Good afternoon. My name is Joanne Ollie. I live next door to this property that Mr. Is talking about. And actually, I have concern.
Interrupt you. Can you state your address for the record, please?
I beg your pardon.
Will you please state your address? We need it for the.
890 Spring Valley Road, Athens, Georgia, 30605.
Thank you.
And actually, we live next door, like I said. And it's will be a little heartache because back in the past, he had some people just coming in, I guess they was friends. And they was loud. If we get this kept site, I realized that you did say that it would just be like a B and B. But once you have the opportunity of having what you want for that period, who to say it's gonna be a little bit longer? We might go 2 or 3 months. Okay, the football season is coming up. And you know how we are at Georgia games. We're a little loud. And I am 79 years old. When I go to bed at 10 o'clock at night, I would like to sleep till 8. And I'm just praying that y'all do not approve of this. I realize that he got property that he need to use, but hopefully he can come up with another idea or maybe build some affordable homes or something, so that we will not be tolerated with the noise and the traffic. And then when you have people coming, all type of people, you don't know who you're really getting in. And right now, we are a little comfortable with who we just have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shirley Russell. I live at 959 Spring Valley Road. All marked property adjacent to mine. My mom and dad built our house in 1963. It's been quiet. But since then lately, we get all kind of kids coming through the woods, destroying stuff, come through our yard. But I don't, and they're about 400 feet from what? My property is not fair. My parents worked too hard for us to be in a safe neighborhood. Since they passed, my sister and I came back to take care of them, but it's not fair to us. We're not young anymore. I can't run. I don't have a gun, I shoot myself. So something needs to be done. Gonna put up a fence or a wall or what? Because we are afraid of our own safety. Because I'm right there, Sunday Drive, 959 Spring Valley Road. And his trailers, where's the 400 feet? I need him to show me. Or do I need to go get my plaque? And then they'll mark off 400 feet from my line to where you go on his side. So I say, please do not approve this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Josh, would you like to take a couple minutes to respond or?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to sort of let you guys know, I appreciate you coming down. I'll be happy to talk to you at length about this. If there are any questions that we can figure out if this is something that could move forward relative to some of your concerns and see if there's anything we can do about that. I think we're open to figuring out a way to make everybody feel comfortable with this proposed design, if we can, for sure. And if not, we'll maybe figure out what plan B is. I think what's interesting about this parcel and the rezone from single family to employment industrial is understanding what some of the potential uses of employment and industrial could introduce. And I'd love to talk to you guys about that and just figure out, coming back to using the property, is there something within that category that maybe we feel appropriate for the property than the campground? And so I think the table's a great idea for a number of reasons, and love to talk to you guys about that. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you. We'll bring it behind the rails. So the staff recommendation is to table this. I don't know if we could, this is a time we can also give some feedback though. So if anyone would like to start that off. Yes, sorry.
I'm around the corner. I think what Josh just mentioned, after hearing from the residents nearby, I think that's probably the most important thing that could happen is that, Josh, you should get with the residents and talk to them and give them definitely a detailed overview of this, not something that's presented to us, because I doubt if they've seen the reports. And a lot of times the fear of the unknown is a lot worse than what is really being posed. And I think they really need to hear from you, and you need to have a back and forth to determine what this is going to be, what it really is, as opposed to what fears might be playing into it. Another thing is I think it's important for people to understand what the zoning is that they live near and what could be built by right with that zoning. And I think that's another important point you need to talk to the residents about, that they need to know this is just a proposal. And the proposal requires not a rezone, but a special use permit. And it's more important that they know also what can be built by right. And a lot of people are just totally unaware of what can go in next door to their property. I think that's extremely important. Okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so Mr. Coons, let me just first say, I'm a proponent of innovation. I think this is a really unique layout. And honestly, I would love it for Athens, but I'm perplexed because we're dealing with a housing crisis. And it's a challenge to think about leisure and fun and a campground when people don't have a place to stay. So I think what you mentioned about aligning with the residents about what would be more appropriate for that space would be my recommendation.
Anyone else? Taylor.
I'm concerned with, I'm from around that way and I also go out that way from time to time. Now I'd be concerned with the neighborhood, Hallmark across the street there. And the effects that it would have on all of those people across the street. Not only just the nearby residents, but you got a ton of kids over there. With this change, what does that mean for them? And how much longer will they be just another community having to uproot and find somewhere else to be home? And I don't support that in that area. I do like the idea of having a putt-putt, but not in that particular area. It's too many people who already established, and I would hate to see another house, added housing crisis in that particular area just because of one change. And I know we talk about what could happen if it's by right, but I also understand how fast things can move with just one change as well. I don't want to see that happening.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? 'Cause I'm also thinking about Hallmark, but I just want to know more about your kind of connective thought process of how this campground putt-putt course leads to displacement of the folks at Hallmark.
Well, I just see it being, you're bringing in business to an area that bringing business to an area that is already, those people, man, it looks bad. Hallmark looks bad. People gonna see that. There's opportunity for somebody else to come in, offer big money, pay them off. They're not doing any renovation to Hallmark. They got potholes everywhere, trailers falling apart. People gonna see that and they gonna offer the money, but just buy it out.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned about that. And I really try to help the Hallmark community out as much as I can. It's something that may be able to help them, benefit them. And then I see a lot of the Hallmark kids, they'll wander over the putt-putt. I know they will.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned about how those kids would be treated and what would happen.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. I feel that. And what you just said about the Hallmark kids, that was my first thought about Hallmark being there and the kids there is like, oh, that would be cool. It'd be a thing that those kids could walk to. And I mean, I definitely, but yeah, and at the same time, like being worried about how they'll be treated, being worried about, it's a flashy hipster. What if it's too expensive for the neighborhood kids? What if it's it's the cultural part of gentrification that is scary. I don't have anything more to add about that at this time, just that it's a very, I hear it a lot. And I hope that the kids at Hallmark are being thought of, as this recreational area gets developed.
Kristen?
Yeah, I find this parcel is like one of those things that make me really like geek out on the planning commission because the varying thought processes that have gone through since I've gone through the packet. At first I was like, cool, glamping. Who doesn't like glamping? And then as I learned more about the zoning in the area, and then I was like, oh, this could be a buffer between the neighborhoods and the other industrial uses. But then, it's interesting because I completely, you're right. Like as more people start to see this area and come over here and, play putt-putt and stay in a vintage camper, it is going to start putting a lot of these neighborhoods at risk for redevelopment as well. And honestly, anytime I see like industrial next to residential, like red flags go up for me too. Cause I'm kind of like, what happened in this zoning to put this industrial next to this neighborhood to begin with? And so that just makes me angry too. So yeah, Josh, as far as the plan goes, I mean, yeah, if we see some architectural renderings of the, that's great. But yeah, I would love to hear how the conversations go with the neighbors to make them feel a little more at ease. So we don't have like a hipster commune invading this part of Athens, so.
Question for Josh and a couple comments, but were you involved when the parcels were rezoned in 2009? And do you remember at the time, were the parcels on the other side of Spring Valley EI?
Don't remember at that time.
Maybe Brad, you
Yeah.
remember? Like, I'm just sort of curious.
I feel like that was the basis for that request, to be honest.
Right, like was it, and I was wondering in 2009 when these parcels went to EI, were the parcels north of Spring Valley Road already EI? So was this?
So I think the property immediately north of Hallmark are zoned EI right now, and I think they were. I'd have to go back and verify exactly when, but
Okay,
that are immediately across the street.
okay. And so when you all are talking about hallmarks, when I think of Hallmark, I was thinking of the mobile home park. Is that what you're
Yeah.
talking about?
Yes.
And are there a particularly large number of kids there, or is it just mobile homes with families in them? Like,
It's a
is
lot
there-
of mobile homes.
Okay.
It's just a large number of people, so you're gonna have a lot of
Okay,
families.
I was wondering if there was a facility or something I didn't know about that was called Remark. Okay. I guess a couple of comments that I would make are, this is a tricky area, because for a lot of reasons, I think, but one of is sewer and water are a problem out here, and I guess I would just reiterate what Lucy was saying in that, right now, the things that could happen in this area that under EI zoning, I think it's not fair for the planning commission to sort of present it as it's this or it's some of these awful things, but I do think it's important to know that current zoning, no residential is allowed. If I'm not mistaken, right? EI is no residential, multifamily or single family. So unless this area were rezoned back to residential, then I don't think it's fair for us to refer to this as like, it's this or then, like by doing this, we're not letting housing happen. Housing is not going to happen here unless it gets rezoned. It's also immediately adjacent to industrial right now. So I think the argument for housing right there would be a hard one to make. And I actually do think from a sort of land use standpoint that it's all the things that could happen here, this is somewhat transitional and does sort of make sense. But I think that I'll be interested to see what happens when the applicant comes back, because maybe there can be some productive conversations with residents and coming up with some ways to sort of address some of these pretty real concerns about safety and access. And anyway, I just think I think we just have to sort of recognize how tricky this particular area is. There's probably no perfect solution. Anyway, I think I'll leave my comments with that. Matt?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something to be sure I understood it right. I was reading through the ordinance earlier today, thinking about this project and am I right, Brad, that in EI zoning, the putt-putt golf doesn't actually require a special use. It's just that if it involves camping, then that triggers the special use requirement. So they could put in commercial outdoor recreation there as of right without coming through this body or asking for anyone's permission.
I think that's correct, and it's the overnight accommodations that's driving. And that was an amendment that was made as a product of some of the RV parks that we were getting over off Hancock Industrial for the tailgate facilities. So, yes.
Okay, and then also, am I right that like hotels and motels are allowed there as of right in EI?
I'd have to go back and double check that, but if it was listed in the EI as a permitted use, and yeah, I think that's correct.
That's what it looked like to me. So I just wasn't aware of that RV park thing or where that came from, but that's the holdup is if they wanted to put in a motel with a mini golf on this site, they could do that.
The original first phase of Bulldog Park, which was the first of the large RV facilities, went in by right as commercial outdoor recreation. Then the ordinance was amended in order to pick that up. That there are commercial outdoor recreational uses that may be very appropriate in an EI zone. But the overnight accommodations was what was concerning. We never really had thought about that, and then that's why that amendment was put in probably 10 years ago. It's probably been that long now.
Not to answer your question, because I had the EI use table up, hotels and motels are absolutely a by right permit, a by right use of this property.
Okay.
And we're in the code where it says why this is not a motel. Is it because they're not all attached?
No, motel, I think motel is defined as they can be detached or attached units.
Yep.
It says
They just have-
structures. I think it used the word structures.
Structures. Okay, sorry. Getting in the,
Josh,
Weeds,
can you
yeah.
enlighten us about that? Do you know?
If you don't mind, just because we have done quite a bit of research on that, and ultimately, the motel, if I remember correctly, the difference between the motel and a hotel, you access rooms via internal central corridor. Motel, you drive up to the outside. So we thought that the campground could be a motel originally, because it can be a series of structures that don't have to be connected.
that was my thought.
Yeah.
But you found,
Well, so in order to have the public stay in something like a dome or a tent, and it be classified as a motel, it has to meet the building code, which includes energy codes and some of these other things that just aren't attainable with that type of construction. And so then you have to look at a campground as an alternative to that. And that's what kicks this in to the special use, is our understanding. So the campground would allow those structures to be rented out by the public. So,
Oh,
yeah.
fascinating. Anyone else?
I'd like to make a motion on the variances to approve the conditions. Because I think they really are very reasonable. I don't think this is anything that's a stretch, and sometimes we get variances that are a bit of a stretch.
Just a question of procedure for staff. So do we need to vote? Actually, I think that was a motion, right? I think I need to wait to say something until I just.
See if we get a second and then I'll answer your
Okay.
question.
Okay, so we have a second. So, can we vote on them in that order? Okay,
I mean, you can make motions that approve the variances and go ahead and dispose of that.
Yeah, that
As variances applied to the property, it still does not approve the special use. And it does not give them the right to build what they're asking to build. But it gives them the assurance moving forward with discussions with the neighborhood, for example, that they know they can do less parking and they can do less impactful driveways, even if they modify their plan. So that gives a little assurance, and I think that's what Lucy is trying to do.
okay. And the variances would be,
We just hold them until the rest of it went forward.
got it. And they would only apply if down the road the special use were approved. Right? Like if you
Yes.
couldn't accidentally tie a variance.
Yeah, but given the nature of the variances attached to the special use, or we'll hold them until Josh brings something back. If the special use could be denied, but I guess technically the variances could be approved on the property and go forward independently. It's never happened before, but my guess is that if you wouldn't reach, it would run with the property, yes.
Okay.
That's my guess, is that, and I'm not a lawyer, but my guess is that by approving the variances, that's a talking point for the special use, but the special use could go away. And
Right, and the variances would stay.
the variances could stay, but they may never apply. All right? Does that make sense?
It does. I just am not sure if that makes things legally messy or not. But if you think if you feel comfortable with that, I just wanted to make sure sort of procedurally that doesn't create a problem down the road or something.
I mean, because it's the planning commission just a recommending body on this. I don't think it binds us into any legal
Okay,
issue at this point.
okay. Any other discussion?
Okay, all right, just looking at what the variance requests are. So as Lucy said, it would go with the property, whether or not you all approve the special use. But so the one variance is to be able to build gravel drive in place of concrete. That would go forward no matter what they decided to build. So if they decide to put a hotel on there, they could put gravel.
But I think the way this is set up, it's still, planning commission is not sitting as the hearings board right now. They don't approve those variances. So once it comes back, they're going to they can make a recommendation to deny the special use, but approve the variances. Or the variances are in place and it would go forward to the mayor and commission with that. Variance approvals and special use denial.
The commission could deny the variance.
Yes.
Right, I'm just saying
Yeah,
that would still,
right.
if they approve that, that
Right,
would go forward with the
right.
land.
But I
It's
still
the
think-
second variance
Yeah,
to lower the required parking for mini golf, even if you all approve that, it seems to be tied to the special use.
Right, right. And that was my thinking, is it's all tied to the special use. And that will depend on whether or not it gets approved.
And we don't have to send the variance on to the merit commission,
No,
which is what really matters, because the merit commission is probably not gonna just approve a random variance for a gravel driveway on something that's not getting built.
I mean, the application's not deemed complete until you make a recommendation on the special use.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the variances. All in favor? And all opposed?
and I will make a motion to table the special use.
Stephen, were you all able to get those votes?
I got it.
Okay, great. Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Matt. Okay, all in favor of tabling the special use request, please say aye, raise your hand. And opposed. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next and that will be the final item, which is 1165 Oglethorpe Avenue.
And at this time, for the record, I am recusing myself.
Thank you. We'll hear first from Jack.
Okay, this application is for 1165 Oglethorpe Avenue. This is the location of the site here. You can see Oglethorpe Avenue is to the north. On the top here, you can see the elementary school is across the street directly at the top of that map. And then you see Forest Heights Baptist is to the right. It is that shaded area. And then the Forest Heights, the neighborhood, the subdivision is below the church there. And then there's some other residential properties. Loop is off to your left off the map. This is what the property looks like currently on the aerial. As you can see, it's mostly open. A lot of that greenery is bamboo coverage. So there's actually no trees on that property. All that greenery is basically bamboo at this point, but you can see the school at the top, the church on the right, and then residential, and then the office, medical office complex up there at the top corner. The request is to amend a planned development. So the property is currently zoned commercial neighborhood with a PD on it. That PD is for a medical office complex similar to the one that's across the street. It would be a 3-building complex. So the proposal is to change the current PD to this request, which is a residential and commercial mixed-use project, 43 housing units, 89 bedrooms, that's broken up into various types of housing, 16 apartments, 14 townhomes, 7 cottages, and 2 triplexes. That works out to a density of 11 units per acre or 23 bedrooms an acre. There is 6,000 square feet of basically neighborhood scale commercial proposed, including cafes, restaurants, and a store potential. That 6,000 square feet is broken up into 2 3,000 square foot buildings. We have an illustration we'll show you later in the presentation. The site plan also includes a plaza and 2 courtyard greens, 78 parking spaces, and then it has several restricted units, 9 age-restricted units, so some senior housing, and then 8 income-restricted units for those making 80% AMI or less. The applicant has requested 14 waivers as part of this application. The PD process is meant to accommodate waivers from the usual underlying zoning. And then we'll consider, in that staff report, we've considered each of those waivers and given our opinion on the merits of those proposals. They are not proposing a change to the future land use. It would remain the same, which is a traditional neighborhood future land use. As you can see, that's the surrounding properties as well on that side of the street. They are also not proposing a change to the current commercial neighborhood zoning. As you can see, it's surrounded by RS 25, which is the medium to large lot residential single family. And you can see there's the school across the street and some commercial office and some other residential zoning around there. This is the current site plan that they've proposed. You can see Oglethorpe Avenue is on the left, the very left there. You see these two dark squares towards the top. Those are your commercial buildings with the apartments on top. They would be 3-story buildings. You have the plaza across the driveway from there in the corner, parking for those areas right behind them. Then you would have a gated drive there that would provide access for parking. And you have two basically pods where you'd have the townhomes in the middle there, organized around the courtyard green. And then you would have the 7 cottages and the 2 triplexes organized on the back green. And they've provided sidewalk access and a two landor drive for the residents of that neighborhood. And then there's also a little bit of parking there as well. This is what the 3-story mixed-use commercial ground floor building is modeled after. This is we have apartments on top on those 2 levels, and then commercial on the bottom. It's a Main Street style building. These are what the cottages are illustrated as. These would be your townhomes. And that would be your triplexes. For now, this project is here as a preliminary plan development, which means it is only here for comments. We have filled our staff report with a lot of comments because there was a lot to dig into here, particularly with all the waivers. We find that the project in general is consistent with our future land use map, our zoning map, and the 2018 comp plan, things like nodal development in walkable areas, adding housing, mixed uses, things of that sort called for in the comp plan. We view this project as consistent with those calls. It does, such as increasing the supply of diverse housing types, neighborhood commercial. We think that's appropriate for this property. We support the age and income restricted units. It provides some affordable access in some new construction. And then we have opinions on the waivers. There are 14 that were requested. Staff has found that we think we can support 6 of those waivers. We think we cannot support 6 of them. And then we found that 2 of them are unnecessary. The code actually allows what they were proposing. There are also 18 additional code items that would need addressing that we found in our review. Some of those may require either compliance or additional waivers. The main issue, and this is the main issue that's triggering some of these waivers, is that the code calls for through street access. So access from Landor Drive to Oglethorpe Avenue via a public street. Staff finds staff supports that. And there are, most of those 6 waivers are triggered by not creating a public street there. We think that the lack of a through street there reduces access, particularly to these commercial properties, and forces people to take a circuitous route around the street network. If you're in Forest Heights or Landor Drive, you got to drive around over to Oglethorpe, drive back, when it could just be a few hundred feet of driving there. And particularly, the applicant has stated they might be interested in a grocery store here. So particularly, we'd want to keep trips short, keep access high. And we also find that the current proposal divides the lot into these more or less isolated pods where they're very disconnected. There's no central thoroughfare there to bring the whole into a cohesive project. So that would be the main issue that we would want the Planning Commission to consider, is whether they should be doing a through street or not. And that would dramatically impact the rest of the project. So that concludes staff report.
Thank you. We'll hear from the applicant next.
Good evening. My name is Joe Polonetsky. I'm representing the partnership tonight. And we believe this is a solid mixed missing middle mixed use development. We're very excited about the project. From a missing middle standpoint, we believe the location, the mixed commercial, residential, and the varied housing types and styles really play into what I think this county needs and what clearly the direction the country seems to be heading. The design we submitted is pretty great out of the gate, in our opinion. What it ends up looking like and whether this ultimately gets passed is entirely up to you. It remains to be seen. We did have 2 very good town hall meetings. We gave everybody large 11 by whatever. And we told them to hang on to these because they kept saying, is this what it's going to look like? This is what it's going to look like. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. And we said, just hang on to this. And if this does come to pass, compare it to the very end thing. And you'll see, how different this is. And we're here to solicit comments. The 2 town hall meetings were well attended at Forest Heights Baptist Church. Pastor Clay was awesome at giving us access to his fellowship hall. And so that was pretty great. I think the 2 main concerns you're going to hear tonight are about traffic and the driveway for the 6 parking spaces for the senior housing off Landor. And I'll let Josh take it from here. Thank you.
So, again, good evening. I'm Josh Coons, working with Joe and his team on this. As Joe said, 1165 picks up on the housing objectives of 110, specifically providing diverse choice in housing that includes apartments, townhomes, and detached homes, all at different levels from affordable to middle and senior income. So the biggest difference between 1165 and 1110 is the commercial component. And at this point in time, we do have 2 pretty solid partners, one being Seth Hendershot for another location of Hendershots, and as well as Tawana Smith Maddox and a daycare facility. So some of what just got presented has evolved a little bit since we submitted back at the end of July. So the store and the grocery component kind of remains to be seen based on how those 2 businesses evolve and how the traffic concerns sort of evolve as well. So as you know, 1165 was previously approved and partially developed actually as a 29,500 square foot medical facility. Given the previous development that occurred on the site and its location on the Oglethorpe corridor, the site is a great fit for infill development and they can maximize the potential of the previously disturbed area. The development is designed into the 3 components: the commercial center, the garden court, and then the Savannah Square that we call the Blueberry Court, sort of in homage to the blueberries that are being grown in Forest Heights. But it ultimately orients the houses to green space and that is, all connected by sidewalks, but they're not oriented to a street. And that's a lot of what drives these variances, as Stephen pointed out. We are sensitive to the fact that this is development that is adjacent to a very established neighborhood. We designed the development to limit the vehicular impacts to Forest Heights by specifically not having the through street to go over there. We understood from the beginning that would impact the neighbors in a way that they would not like. But we did want to provide them pedestrian access. And so that is, a pedestrian walkway that reaches out and touches Landor. The only vehicular access is the drive that serves the senior residents in the back. We've met with the residents twice, as Joe mentioned, and their concerns are for the increased traffic potential on Landor associated with the driveway and informal parking back there. They're also concerned about the traffic on Oglethorpe as a whole. We have reached out to traffic engineering just to talk about both of those issues and have them assess the current conditions on Landor and Oglethorpe. The reality is this development actually represents 20% less traffic than what was previously approved by nature of the use. Medical use has a much higher trip count per day, has higher peak hour counts. So this brings all of that down by roughly 20%. The lack of the cut through street, or that second connection, as I mentioned, is one of a number of variances. This is a project that doesn't meet current zoning standards, which are driven sort of towards street orientation, street access. And that's where, quite honestly, we had to break a lot of rules to sort of make this work. The other elements that were noted as technical items are things like buffers that we have the space to deal with and intend to do that. So I'm confident that we can work through some of those. Our parking count, I think, is probably our biggest challenge and something that we're working on. We think that the people who would locate here wouldn't have 2 cars at every residence. And so ultimately, we're looking at 1.5 cars. We think that that's a reasonable adjustment for those. But there is a lot of existing parking around this. And we're currently working on trying to get a formal shared parking agreement so that we don't necessarily have to add a lot of pavement where we already have a lot of pavement available if we can work with some of our neighbors. So in summary, we think that this development does increase the housing opportunities that we're looking for. But it also, provides something for the larger neighborhood and the existing neighborhoods. And that's that commercial component. Some of the folks who live on Landor are here tonight, and we're certainly sensitive to their concerns, but we're also excited about the residents who are looking forward to walking down to Hendershots as well. So thank you in advance for any comments you have, and we'll certainly work towards taking those into consideration moving forward.
At the public comment portion of this item, is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of this application? And is there anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition to the application?
Good evening. I feel like saying good night. We've been here quite some time. I am Susan Brooks. I reside at 155 Landor Drive. And if you notice at the back of the plan, you can't see it, but if you look at I think you have a picture. And you can, in the back of the residence where 155 Landor is, in that curve, you see only one home. That home happens to be mine, which is directly in front of their driveway, their street, and the pathway. So that's why I'm here. I'm not here to change the whole scheme of things, but I do want the street and the pathway removed. There are a lot of reasons. I have personal reasons and there are community reasons. If you ever go on Landor, and I'm sure you've never been, there is a blinding curve there. And that blinding curve is a concern for everyone on Landor and anyone that drives down there. It can, when you drive there, you have to look both ways. When you're coming, you have to when you're coming around the curve, you have to make sure. When you go the opposite way, you have to make sure. It is a dangerous curve. And for this new development to be built, it is going to create traffic on what I've heard from other people, our quiet, nice residents. That Landor Drive is an area that allows people to walk, jog, stroll. Kids go from Oglethorpe. They use Landor as a way to get home. Their parents walk with them from home up Landor. It's just it's a community street at Forest Heights. But the reason why we're concerned is because the residents, as they've already mentioned, they've only given them a park and a half. I don't know what a park and a half is. If you can explain that, please let me know. But they've only given them a park and a half. So people who visit, even if they're seniors, people who come and take care of them, where do they park? Guess where? They park on Landor. People who want to go to Hendershots, but don't want to drive all the way around, they park on Landor, and guess what they do? They walk through the path. So I foresee this creating a lot of traffic flow, and a lot of traffic flow that can just impede on our way of lifestyle in Forest Heights. It takes away from our community. I'm not saying to get rid of this. I'm just asking that we don't have a driveway and a pathway off of Landor. I have other concerns, but I think my neighbors can probably say more than I can. So thank you. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Byron Spraggins, 155 Landor Drive. Pretty much everything she said, I pretty much feel the same way. Our street is a very quiet street, well traveled for us walking, seniors, children, and just neighbors in general. And also my concern is the overflow of traffic. We've met with them twice and they seem to think that it's not going to be an overflow of traffic into the neighborhood, but there's no way it's not going to be. Oglethorpe is a very high driving street. The school is there. You're going to have businesses. That's a poor illustration right there too, but can't really see. But it's just going to be a lot of traffic on our street, and it's going to disrupt not more so the neighborhood, but the streets behind it. Forest Heights Drive, around, and Landor. And we're just really concerned about the kids. We're concerned about our own safety. And we would like for that driveway not to be there. We're not worried about the development, them developing. I think it's a good thing, but some things need to be changed about it. If they are concerned about safety as much as we are invested in the neighborhood. So of course we're going to be more outspoken about things that they're not. They pretty much say, well, it'll be okay, or it's going to be not as bad as you all think it is. But we can't predict the future, and they can't predict the future neither. But people that's going to be moving here, I would like to think their family's going to grow and not decrease. So with that, the family's growing, there's going to be more traffic, more cars, more parking, more things for them to do. So that's all I have to say, and thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Can y'all pull up slide 34? I mean, I think it would be helpful to see. I'm Andrea Jolliffe. I live at 150 Landor Place. So we're in the curve there where Byron and his wife came up and spoke. I've had the pleasure of, I'm their neighbor on the backside. So I got the notice I'm within 400 feet of this, and I want to come and speak a couple of things I have to say. One is planning really could, I think to Ms. Rowland's point about people don't understand. It's true, we don't. I have legal training and I struggled to figure out what was going down here tonight. I looked online, the agenda wasn't at all helpful. It didn't give me any information about what was going on. There was nothing about the 14 variances posted on the agenda with reference to them. The staff report that your office put together, that would have been really helpful for us as a community to have seen attached to your agenda. And so I think we could have come more educated and prepared with more pointed remarks about things that really matter. But fumbling around, trying to kind of figure it out, one thing that I don't understand looking at these variances is just on a basic level, the 2013 plan that was approved did not have any access to Landor Place. And I think some of the things that we've heard as a community from the developers is there was a necessity for a variance so that there wouldn't have to be, that there would otherwise have to be access to Landor. And that 2013 plan provided kind of a kinder, gentler, more neighborly proposal that had a big buffer there towards the end of the property. But the plan that's up there now at slide 36, I mean, if you look at that, where my neighbors are, we're gonna have people driving out of that rear driveway, which is a road, shining their headlights into the front of their home. And in their own plan, the developer says that they anticipate 714 trips in and out of in their own plan. That's a lot of traffic. And I want to paint a picture for you too. What you don't see is that field. This has the potential to be important community space for an established neighborhood. There is another residential community that's planned across the street for Oglethorpe. And I had some feelings about that initially, but had some conversations with people who know a lot more about housing than I do. And one of the things that I learned is we do have an issue with needing more housing. More
and more housing that on a place like Oglethorpe where there's a bus line. But I think here it's really important to understand that this is zoned commercial and it has the potential to be a community space if that's really what they wanted. But this is a nominal amount of commercial. And as I've trying to fumble through these variances and figure out what's going on, when I looked at section 9-10-2 on permitted uses, I see dwellings above or below businesses. Well, they're permitted, but there's some restrictions. They have to be above or below the businesses. Duplexes are not permitted. So I don't understand how we could approve a triplex without first changing the overall zoning. So a lot of this is just, I don't understand what's happening here because we don't have good information about the agenda. Just said a change to the plan. I had to dig on Facebook to find some summary here, but as I read it, I don't see, if you can't have duplexes, how can you have triplexes? And this,
Sorry, I have to cut you off because you hit your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Hi, good evening. My name is Shelton Ballou. I live at 200 Landor Drive. I'm a father, a teacher, neighbor, a lover of green space, and I'm an active member in the community. I don't want to overspeak for any of my neighbors, but I do live on Landor, and where the curve is the top right-hand corner that we're most concerned about, that's even better shot. I'm towards the top, so not right on the curve, but I'm higher up. And I wanted to reiterate that I think everyone's excited about this project. We like it. I think it's a good idea. But the concerns and order of worry is security. There is a park there that the church is very generous about letting the children use. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And it is right by that. It's not quite a hairpin turn, but it's right there. There are no sidewalks. They're deer, which I guess when they develop, those will be gone. But when you come around that curve, it's really dangerous. It's a blind spot and it's a wide road. It's a beautiful road. So it's very inviting for people to walk, joggers, walkers. My 5-year-old daughter likes, it's a very steep hill and it's a sharp curve, which that picture does not render. So as you're coming down, someone like me coming home in our minivan, if you're going 25 miles per hour, you come up on people. I've done it with my wife's neighbor who walks her daughter to school, which is great. We want to continue that. I would say the curve is a security concern even without that driveway there. So I want to make that really clear. I wish there was a speed bump or a raised sidewalk or just some yellow paint. I think that would help. There's nothing there. When you turn the curve, Byron's lovely children and Susan's that just spoke earlier, park when they come to visit, as anyone's kids would do if they're an adult age. So it narrows the street even more. It is a pinch point. And it is exactly where that driveway points, if anyone parks. Everyone is super excited about this development, but the people in the back of our neighborhood, I know we're not going to walk all the way up because there's not sidewalks all the way up. So they're going to come park right down the curve. So what I'm saying is it's a blind spot, a steep hill, children, a park, people going to school, and now Hendershots, which, by the way, I will be going to Hendershots, but I will be adding to that. But I'm saying something needs to be studied there if it could. I was a little bit surprised to see the cottages for senior citizens, 55 and above. I'm in my 50s. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I'm not thinking about retiring. So I'm a little surprised to see that. I have lots of people over at my house. I like to entertain, and as they should. But these people are going to park on that curve, is what we're saying, and it is a security factor. My neighbors are more concerned because that driveway points right at their living room. The headlights are going to hit it. So I understand them. They're completely right. I think something that would alleviate it, like I said, is we could address that curve, shift the driveway so it doesn't point right at Susan and Byron's house, but maybe angled off. I know they would like it removed, and I totally support that, but I think there are different ways to address this, and we could start with them. And it sounds like they're very open to it, and I'm very appreciative of that. The other concern I have is that school, everyone's coming out, and I'll finish with this, wants to make a left turn to get back into Forest Heights, the biggest neighborhood, and it blocks the traffic. So Oglethorpe's already a mess. If someone would we didn't even have a crosswalk for these kids. That's another security issue. If we could get a traffic light there and it was on a timer that went off during the school hours, I think that would help. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Andrea Green, and I am totally against it. They are taking away that, it's not a bamboo. They say it's all bamboo, but it's not. The deers goes into that field and it's all greenery. It does have some bamboo, but it's mostly green. So I am totally against it. I have kids and the kids are all over the neighborhood. And I feel like if they go along with this plan, that we're gonna have a lot of incidents with the kids going to school, getting out of school. So I feel like they should not go through. Thank you.
Ms. Green, could you state your address for the record?
195 Lander.
Okay, did you all hear that? 195. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Does the applicant wish to take their 2 minutes to respond to any of the concerns at this point? You also don't have to if you don't want to.
Oh, no, I mean, I just, again, we appreciate everybody's coming out. We do, and we are, as I mentioned before, we've reached out to transportation engineering to take a look at Landor, how it exists now. Development, just to look at traffic calming measures that probably sound like they need to be considered regardless. So we've got that started. We'll continue to work with you. We've been talking about the driveway internally to see what options we have. And so we understand that that's a sensitive point. I think the one thing that, is just the bigger question to the loss of the green space, which got referenced twice, is just understanding that I think we lost that with the initial development. This is an opportunity to kind of seize on something that we've already lost in the best way that we can as we see it. So, but again, I really appreciate everybody's opinion. Love to talk. We haven't talked to you already. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with our discussion. Anyone like to start us off? Sarah?
Yeah, I thought that hearing these concerns was really interesting. And I thought specifically that it was very interesting. It seems to me that the concerns that were brought here primarily by the folks on or near Landor Drive are going directly against staff's biggest concerns with the waivers that are requested, which is relating to, and I don't know, I don't know if we're thinking or looking at the same thing, because y'all are talking about a driveway that goes onto Landor Drive. When I see the driveway I see going onto Landor Drive has access to 7 parking spaces for like 3 cottages. And that line that goes through the square, just to make sure we're on the same page, that is a walking path. Okay. And it sounds like what staff wants is, or what staff is most concerned about, is that per our technical zoning, our technical guidelines for these developments, that walking path should actually be a car path, which would go not to 7 parking spaces for 3 or 4 cottages, but to the big main would cut through directly to the big main commercial space. And then I think you are looking at a lot of folks from, down on Rivermont and down on Woodcrest and back towards the back of Forest Heights. That's when you're thinking, okay, that is the Forest Heights driveway, and the cars of Forest Heights specifically now are more likely to come up around Landor Drive, whereas right now they don't have any reason to because it's just a little loop. And so it looks to me that what the plan that's been brought before us, I don't know if it has been, if it used to have a car drive straight through, or if that has been changed, or if it was a part of the original plan to have primarily a pedestrian connection to Landor Drive. But that's what I'm seeing here right now, is that there are like 3 or 4 houses that are accessed by car via Landor Drive, maximum 7 parking spaces. And the rest of the traffic has to enter and exit from Oglethorpe. And I also, I understand the general purpose of our technical standards for having these cross-through streets, but I can definitely see why it would not make sense to have the connection be there, because connecting to Landor just connects you back to Oglethorpe by a longer way. It does, it sends you into Forest Heights, which is a big winding noodle mess of streets that ultimately don't connect to anything else other than like 1 or 2 other exits onto Oglethorpe. So for that reason, I am in support of the applicant's request for waivers relating to this other connection point. And I feel that it is a design that is responsive to these concerns about traffic on Landor Drive. But I hope that they will continue to speak with more residents, as I'm sure that they will, and address the concerns more specifically. But I think that part specifically looks pretty cool. I like it.
Anyone else? Lucy?
One of the things that I have thought about for years has been the minimum parking requirements that we have. That's sort of a construct that has come from traffic engineering that goes back, I think, to the 60s, where they determined, kind of like pulling it out of the air. They said, well, for an office building, we're going to make it this many parking space, minimum parking space. I think Newton County, Covington, instead of having, and I may be wrong on this, but this is my memory, and it goes back probably 20 years. Instead of having minimum parking requirements for buildings and developments like this, they have maximum requirements. And the name I can give you is Randy Vinson. Do you know Randy? Okay. You need to talk to him, because he's either the planning director or used to be the planning director for Newton County. And they have operated with this for at least 2 decades. And I think Athens-Clarke County needs to look at our minimum parking, which may be something where we're actually telling people to put in more asphalt than is really needed. And that obviously affects our quote green space too. Oglethorpe Avenue, it's a mess. And I think everybody knows it. There are too many curb cuts, especially from where the fire station is, headed towards the bypass. You have especially, well, actually, Money could probably address this as well as anybody. Both sides of the street, you've got literally individual houses with individual driveways, and each one of those curb cuts is a conflict point. I don't think we're going to see that change much in the near future, but there needs to be a corridor study. And Brad knows this about me. I'm big on corridor studies, especially on major entrance or gateways like Oglethorpe has become because of the bypass. So I would like to pack that in somewhere. The lead request of the mayor and commission that they have that done through transportation and public works, that they do a corridor study. I'm not an engineer. I play one on, but I'm not an engineer, but by God, I know that that street needs to be fixed. I do think, and once again, I think this was genius. Well, maybe not genius, but it's obvious to me. The street or the driveway from this particular development is right across from Oglethorpe School. That is a perfect place for some sort of a traffic signal. And I've seen it during when school ends or when school's out. That place, it just really packs up. It just lines up. They need to have some means of getting people into the school and out of the school. And it should not conflict with this particular development. So I think this is a good start. But I do think there needs to be some signalization, or Transportation and Public Works needs to do a study of this. It's not as bad as Prince Avenue, but it's not good. As for the, having a street that goes through to Landor, I've been looking at this and I frankly can't see a good way to have an outlet on Landor because of the configuration of Landor Drive. Some people worry and they say, oh, well, you know, we need to put in yellow lines. Yellow lines are the worst, yellow curbs are the worst thing you can do if you want to slow traffic. You want to put it into it where it goes into a funnel, where you actually have to really, really slow down in order to get through that street. So forget about yellow curbs, number one. But Landor Drive needs to be looked at. I think that Transportation and Public Works can make some recommendations on that too, as to what might make that street safer. Because right now it is. Okay, I'm gonna get off. That's it.
A couple comments. I do really agree with, I don't know how much control you all have over this, but some sort of signalization to get people to cross Oglethorpe would, I think, enhance this. Also, unless I'm mistaken, school parking lots are available at night. Is that right? Like, can anyone park in a school parking lot?
Yeah, I think
so.
They do it at Barrow.
Might be nice to actually have, you know, an easier walk across Oglethorpe, a safer walk, and that could help alleviate, you know, ideally you have these activated, lively commercial spaces that would also have evening, you know, place to have a glass of wine. I can't remember what you said is going to be in there, but anyway, that might be something. I thought that the staff made some thoughtful comments about the plaza space that I think is worth you all considering. That's on page 10. I don't know enough about Plaza Design, but it piqued my interest, and we're kind of thinking about whether they're talking about sort of having a very defined center, clear and lively edges, features, multiple layers. So I just would sort of direct your attention to that, because obviously somebody put some real thought into that. I agree with Lucy. The idea of cutting not only car but also pedestrian access off from Landor, it bugs me in terms of just access to the site by the neighbors, but then I do also really hear what the neighbors are saying, and there's not really a good way to do it, but the idea of completely cutting this off from that neighborhood, from the back that is off from that neighborhood seems sort of offensive to me in a way, you know, like I do sort of understand, like, in other words, we always talk about like developments turning their backs to neighbors and turning back to the neighborhood. And I think what we're hearing from the neighbors is please turn your backs to us. And I see this sort of thoughtful, you know, Blueberry Plaza kind of trying to like touch on this new, you know, the energy in that neighborhood around their Blueberry Festival or whatever they call it. Anyway, so I don't really have a great answer to that. I just, yeah, I don't know what it is, and maybe there's some solution on Landor that would, at the very minimum, like allow for pedestrian access. But then, you know, I don't know how you restrict parking. Then, you know, whoever made the comment about people from further back in the neighborhood, then you know, driving closer, parking on Landor so that they can then walk into the development. That's not great for the folks that live on Landor. It could maybe be worth, so if you were going to restrict vehicular access onto Landor, would it be even plausible to like have some designated, if you're going to keep the pedestrian access, could you keep some designated parking there? And does that actually just create the problem anyway? I don't know, but like, I guess I would just really like to see a pedestrian access stay. And I'm not really sure the best way to do that, but maybe it's worth kind of thinking what everyone said in the neighborhood. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I know what you mean, the person who said that about senior housing being 55 and older. I always like that was kind of throws me off, but I think that's a HUD definition. And I think it has to do with you're only actually allowed to legally restrict age by age if it's 55 and up. So yeah, a lot of us that are in that age range are probably just in denial, but I am sure.
It's gonna be my age.
Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to respond to the person who was talking about staff report access and, I definitely encourage folks to call the planning department. One nice thing about this process is we're not voting on tonight. This is comments only. There will be another, at least 1, if not 2 months, till this comes back to us. So that's a really good time. Like I would call and make your, get the information you want, but also make your concerns heard about what documents would be more helpful for you all to have. And maybe the staff reports are on the website, just a little harder to find or something, but anyway, I think that's worth thinking about. So people who do want to inform themselves have a little bit more information, or at least feel comfortable start calling you all more, because even before I became a planning commissioner, I found the planning staff to be very responsive to phone calls. So as far as I don't really, just looking at sort of design and what y'all are trying to accomplish in this, it's impressive. And I don't really have any comments on the actual design itself. I think it's great. So that's what I have. Yeah.
I just want to clarify that I think that the pedestrian access to Landor Drive makes perfect sense. You might be surprised at how many people will walk from a further distance to get to that pedestrian entrance. People who live at the very back of Forest Heights are not going to walk to it, obviously, but they're probably not going to go there anyway. It's going to be the people in those surrounding streets, the closer in streets, the people who jog, the people who walk. They're going to be the ones who are going to be most likely to use that pedestrian entrance. That's at least the way I see it. And actually, like I pointed out at the beginning, parking on street really stops traffic, really slows it down, so that it's not a speed demon, going around curves up and down hills. They really have to slow down because visually they've only got one lane, and they're going to have to respect that one. I've been doing this for years.
Anyone else like to add their comments, Liddy?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So my question is around, it says approximately 9 of the residences were constructed for elderly citizens. How was the 9 selected? Is that like an arbitrary number or is that a standard?
I'm not quite sure exactly what calculus was used to come up with that number. Right now, everything is just, I think it's something we wanted to do. We wanted to have it sort of in its own area, especially if it was senior living. And a word about senior living, I said at the town hall, if we could say 65 and older, let's do it. In my head, what I'm envisioning is somebody who maybe doesn't drive, or if they do drive, they drive very little, or somebody who sold their house and they're in their 70s and they don't want to get a new loan. They want to live off the money they made from selling their house, and so they buy a nice rental that's economic or efficient energy wise, and that's who we are envisioning there. So I'm 54, and I get what you're saying. I don't know how we do that legally and say you have to be 65 or older. If we can do it, we would love to do that, and just to give somebody a sense that they're in a safe place. There's people of varied ages around them, keeping an eye on each other and that kind of thing. That's what the whole concept of this stuff is. But as far as how we came up with those numbers, I'd have to get back to you on it, to be honest with you.
I was just curious. We have a growing population of older citizens, and I just want to make sure they're really being considered Because it does say middle income home buyers. And I mean, according to AARP, this is a elderly citizen hub. So I just want to make sure that, I mean, is there a way that that number could be increased?
We would certainly look at anything. And we are, in our head, who we're envisioning being there are people like you just described, age-wise. It's really what we want. And I don't know how we can do it without AARP or somebody saying, no, you have to say 55 or older. I'm not too smart on that law, to be honest with you.
I also agree with having a corridor study. I mean, as is, the area is really just compacted. So I think that definitely has to happen, a traffic signal as well. And then you mentioned parking space agreements. Who would you be making those agreements with?
We've been talking to the church, and obviously being on that side of the street, not having to cross Oglethorpe. I believe they've gotten back to us yet. As you can imagine, a church is more than one person. But that's the obvious. Sarah's remark about the school parking lots, I hadn't heard before. I was under the impression that we had to get a formal agreement from the school system to count towards parking. Because a lot of the parking that we are anticipating at our high peaks is after the school hours, which would be very beneficial if that were the case. So those were the two, just given proximity that we.
Okay.
And if I may, we did hear back from the church. We've been in contact with them. I just didn't mention it to you. We had been in contact with them while they were getting the fellowship hall open to us a couple times. We did put together a packet for the deacons that had some drawings and some ideas and just engaging in a conversation with zero expectation that they are going to say yes or no. And we were real sensitive to discussing that at the town hall meetings because we didn't want somebody from the church saying, hey, I heard through the grapevine that you are going to do this with the people next door now. And we didn't want to do that. We were merely having an informal conversation. The most formal part of it was us introducing the partnership to them in a little packet. And Pastor Clay said, hey, I think we want to hear back from you. And we said, we didn't even want to bother you. We're waiting for us to hear from you. We're trying to be very low key about it with them. And so he said, I think we would like to set up a meeting now. So we are going to talk with them and just see what they think. And we're having similar to a town hall that we had, but with the church. And we have a couple of different scenarios, ideas that we're just not ready to discuss, but we, out of respect for their privacy, really, and their process.
I think what I'm hearing from the residents is that they are excited about the plan. They just want to make sure some due diligence is done, not to compromise the existing neighborhood. So it sounds like you're on the path.
We are. We're hoping to be going further down that path. Thank you.
One thing, I was just thinking about what you were saying, Josh. I have no idea. I guess I was thinking a little bit more of the elementary school parking as just something that people could naturally do. Like I'm thinking about like the way that people who are going to Marker 7 and 5 Points park at the fire station. Like it's not really under anyone's control that I'm aware of. So I don't even know if it, I guess I was thinking that a little bit more as a solid argument for safe crossing. Rather, because I also don't know about whether that could be a formal agreement that would help with parking requirements. So Kristen, did you have your hand up earlier?
I did, but it's okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I think hopefully you've got some good feedback to work with and wish you all luck. There's a lot of residents. Okay. Okay. I do not have a report. Brad, do you have a report?
I do not have a report this evening. We're off cycle with mayor and commission. They will vote next week. We'll have a lot in the following month.
Okay.
We're just really cozy right now.
Oh, yeah, oh gosh, I don't know how long this is.
All right, I would entertain a motion for anyone who'd like to adjourn. So moved, then moved. Okay, all in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Forgot to say, I forgot to say, you are an engineer.
You are